All right, and welcome to the Raptor Circus Feedback Podcast Show, whatever. Today, we're going to be looking at a game by Vaser called LangSink. But first, before we get to that, let me introduce our panel of guests. We've got Vaser himself.
Hello.
We have Josh Sutphin.
I am he.
We have Lyle Cox.
Hello.
And we have me. I am Vince Betteridge. And from there, I'm going to let Vaser take it away for a little while and kind of explain his project. If he wants to direct me on kind of what to do, I'll do it while he's talking. I'm going to be your navigator this evening. But go ahead and take it away, Vaser.
All right. So everything's meant to be pretty straightforward. You should be able to play through it with a blind playtest. But the goal of the project was to simulate the experience of going to a foreign country or learning or being exposed to foreign language. This comes from my Japan trip when I went to Sense of Wonder Night in Japan, which is kind of like game developers conferences, experimental gameplay workshop. So it's not really full game. It's experimental and it's really short, but hopefully it helps make you think. And ideally, what I would like it to do is to help you feel a little lost when you're faced suddenly with a bunch of words you don't understand, and then the experience of struggling through that, and then maybe that can help make the world a better place by helping you realize that there are people around you all the time, even right now, that don't speak your language very well, and the kinds of things. Since if you play this, you'll have a little bit of an experience of what it's like, then you'll know things you can do to help them if you want to help them. So,
Is there anything in specific you'd like talked about, or would you like me to kind of direct the conversation?
So I have those opening topics where I'm not sure if I'm fully complete with what I want to do here yet. I think it's really close to getting there. I have a lot of projects that I want to get through from that are inspired by that Sense of Wonder Night, and so I don't want to spend more than a month on each one. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping it in scope, but I also, of course, still want to make it the best it can be. So we could just go talk about as you play through what your thoughts are there, and then we can intersperse that with people's ideas if they had any of improvements that could be done in the time I have left this month.
So, for the first part, I have talked to the mermaid girl, gotten a whole ton of resources from her, the drops, and I talked to the guy at the top and traded them in for Puff. And that was all like in my language. Like there was no translation at all required. Like I just did what he said exactly as he asked me to do it. There was no language interpretation at all. And now we talked to the guard. He says it's still in our language, and he wants the puff. So what you've set up right here in this first part is kind of like a trade economy game, as from what I've played on the stream so far, anyway. Like, and this game isn't very long, and we're already like really into it, and all we've done is trade stuff in our own language.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even critiquing it all right now. I'm just describing what's happening.
Okay. Yeah. Some comments there is like um, the elements there are something that I'm going to be using in future projects, and so I wanted to um, kind of explore those here. And then some like uh, thinking about language and in life in general, you think about the different things that you do or the different things you spend time doing. Um, and to me, it can be broken down into three general areas. There's the times when you're trying to give someone something, and then there's times when you're trying to, which is like selling, and then there's times when you're trying to get stuff, which is like taking, and then there's just talking about where you're going in life or what you're supposed to do next. And so I broke it down into those three player actions. And so buying and selling, it may be a little bit cynical that those are the only things you can do in life, but those were a lot of the experiences that I had in Japan that I wanted to reflect. They all kind of boil down into those categories. So.
Okay, now I've talked to the old man, and he's given me a little taste of this language that we're experiencing. We have the what is it? Mumbles to himself. We have speak differently here in VO, so we get this. So I think we're about halfway through this experience, and now we're starting to introduce the different language here. And this guy kind of says mumbles to himself, G0 T0, which it's off a weird vibe. Like it doesn't quite put off a different language. It kind of feels like a computer glitch.
Mm.
And then we have like this other tourist here who's telling us, I don't want to take anything. He kind of has a couple symbols in a different language, and then he immediately switches to English and tells us what's happening. We have a guard up here. Lays his hand in front of the face. And then here we have here's where like the first thing of what you're trying to get across kind of surfaces as far as I'm aware. We have, after an impatient stare, the guard speaks slowly as if talking to a child. He says G dot 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 $, $, dot dot dot. And this is kind of like a puzzle in some. It's like a very lenient puzzle. I kind of know the solution to it. It's to offer 6 4 grunts and gestures you through, and exclamation point and exclamation point. Now we're able to pass this bridge and pass the guard. Go in. Talk to this, I think his name is I.O. Smiles and continues singing. And then this guy totally speaks a different language. We're kind of given some cues as to what he's doing. And we know from our objective in the beginning that we want to get rid of the press thing. So as far as I've figured out, the only thing I can do with this character is give him items. Tried giving him droplets. He says something to me, but I don't understand it. Try to give him pulse. Wait, I clicked the wrong button. Because he's not taking my items, but he's not refusing them either. And I'm going to skip press for now and go to buff. So E6 1 ignores that too. So the only thing I've found that this player responds to is E5 1. And he took that, and he appears crestfallen now. Now, when I talk to him, stare silently at the press and sighs, and then we have a fin, which I don't know if it means end or not.
Yeah.
And what else does he say? Number sign dot 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 fin. So is that the entire experience, or did I miss anything?
That's basically all of it. If you press space on her before you give her the press, then you discover that she gives out pulse for free, kind of like the mermaid.
Oh, I didn't.
Which,
I have one pulse, but did I? I don't know if I got that from her or not.
yeah, I do have. That's the only way to get it.
Okay.
So yeah, I think you did get everything then.
All right. So if we just talk about what happened, like without any sort of critique so far, we were in a world where we were in the part of the game where people spoke our language. They want us to do this sort of economy, like flea market trading sort of thing. Try to get a good deal and like trade to get your way. We have the old hermit who kind of actually doesn't help us that much. He mumbles to himself and says that people speak differently in VO. Then we go over to the VO side and talk to the tourist who just kind of tells us the same thing, that they speak differently here. We have the guard puzzle that tries to that's basically the same puzzle as we did before, but now slightly more puzzly in the text you give us. And then we have the puzzle with the singing lady. So I'm wondering, like, regardless of what you said this accomplishes, what do you guys think this actually does accomplish in its current form?
Well, I can ramble about that for a little bit. I felt like I kind of bounced off it initially and didn't quite like get it on my first experience through. Um, I had kind of the same reaction that you had a few minutes ago, Vince, when you first start seeing the foreign language, and it felt more like it looks on the screen more like computer glitch than like they're speaking a different language. And so it was kind of throwing me, and I still kind of managed to work my way through what was going on and get to the end. Um, but I got to the end, and I was kind of like, okay, I don't know that that really like did for me what I think this is supposed to do. And then I went back and I played through it again. Actually, while you were streaming, I was sitting here playing my own copy behind everything you're just doing for the last like 10 minutes. And upon playing through it again, I don't know if I just needed the context or whatever, but like I'm starting to kind of understand the foreign language a little bit more rather than just kind of working out the puzzle. Like I can actually kind of get it. Like there's a couple places where people say stuff that's not like the old man you were talking about. He mumbles to himself in the other language. He doesn't ever say anything in the language that is like necessary to gameplay. He's not telling you what you need to give him or what he can give you or anything like that. He just sort of has this little mumble. But I feel like I know what the mumble means now. And a couple of the other cases, like when you talk to the guards and you're not offering them the right thing or whatever, or the second guard anyway, and you're not offering the right thing, like, and he'll get like all upset and like shout a string of symbols at you. And my first time through, I was like, he's just shouting gibberish at me. I don't know what this is. And the second time through, I feel like I kind of understand what he's saying. So in that sense, I feel like it actually does do what it was intended to do and creates the experience of getting immersed into a foreign language. But I think that the game as it is too short to fully deliver that experience. I think I needed a little bit more time immersed in it and a few more things to do once I pass the threshold of actually talking to people who are exclusively talking in the foreign language to actually start to make the connections and understand it as a language rather than just kind of puzzle my way through the mechanical puzzle.
Right.
Okay.
I'm going to be a little bit more brutal. I'm going to say that as this game currently exists, if I don't have your context to go off of, this feels like a flea market game to me. It feels like I'm just trading economies back and forth, and like this guard down here doesn't feel like a character speaking a foreign language. It feels like a character speaking in a video game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels really gamey, and it when it feels that gamey, it kind of doesn't have any meaning to me other than its video game meaning. If this person had like been speaking, like if you'd have just even like substituted a foreign language in here and then like maybe like completely like jibbled up the words, like as long as it was like a long string of sentences with like maybe if, I know we wanted to avoid like ciphers or languages that already existed, or maybe we didn't, but like it feels like if that was at least there, I was like trying to pick up on pattern recognition. Like I feel like that's more true to experiencing a foreign language because they would be repeating the same things over and over to you to try to get the point across, and you'd be like saying, "Okay, you're saying the same thing to me." Whereas this, I kind of only get a couple characters and then a long string of like in emoticons or in quotes English, and it doesn't feel like maybe they'd be like speaking to you in grunts or whatever, but at that point you kind of need to get rid of all of the English that you're typing into their sayings as well. I don't know. These are just like shots in the dark at what you're going for, but I really feel like this is kind of like if it comes across as mostly flea market without your context. I feel like I can paint your context on if I get this explanation that you gave us at the beginning, but if I'm coming to this experience fresh, that was the takeaway I took away from it. I tried to remove myself from your context, and that's how it felt.
Hmm.
Lyle is silenced by his baby.
I have comments. I'm just trying to formulate them into sentences.
Okay.
So when you're in Japan and you're trying to learn the culture and everything, I'm wondering how your understanding of, I guess in this context, you're bartering, right? You're buying and selling. Um, what is your understanding of the items that you're buying and selling with? Because if your understanding isn't that great, like if you're brand new into the you might not the currency or whatever, right? But if they have cents and dollars, right, they're equivalent of cents and dollars, and you don't know the difference between the two, um, that could be more confusing, and which the system might do. Um, but the system's using my observation is this system is using English words that have some sort of intrinsic meaning to us already, right? Spark, drop, jump, pulse, press, puff. Um, that maybe isn't the feeling that you would get if you're trying to be like if you're immersed in a new culture without any context to it beforehand. And I don't know, since I didn't have your experience of going to Japan and being there, I don't know what you're trying to recreate, but maybe that could be changed in the way it's represented to more reflect your experience. I don't know, thoughts?
Yeah, it's a there's a lot of things that I would like to do. Um, make the inventory system a lot more like reflect. Okay, this is you going and buying food, and this is what it's like normally, and then this is what it's like in the foreign language. But I'm getting some good ideas from the subjects here. So, and I think ideally, I wouldn't have any text over there, but then I'd have to put in a bunch of complex, detailed artwork to get across all of the things that I write. because
You could,
the body language is a big deal, you know.
right. You could use ASCII art or just a string of ASCII characters, right, instead of actual words. I don't know if that would change the experience to be more representative of your experience or not, but
Hmm.
I don't know if it's relevant, but for my part, I was looking at that little window in the lower right. Based on what you guys are saying, I feel like you were reading it as almost like a little translation guide, like that is saying this symbol is this object. I didn't really read it that way so much. I was reading the symbols as if they were already ASCII art. Like I just assumed that a pound sign for a chunk or whatever it was, is just the ASCII art representation of the thing. Like that if there had been a whole art production push on this game, that there would have been a little art inventory icon thing in place of the pound sign. And I don't know if that's the way it was intended or not, but that was the way that I read it. And so I kind of had that feeling of it's not one to one, but it would be like the experience of the person trying to tell me I want that and pointing to that thing that I'm holding, because we don't have we're not speaking the same language.
Hmm.
Just
Well,
obviously, we're in a lo-fi enough game that you don't actually have an animation of a person pointing to a graphic of a thing and all that stuff.
Right.
yeah, we don't have like lo-fi. So this is a lo-fi game for sure, and you're trying to get in all of this complex body language when it might have been a more uh, manageable task to just deal with the big, large, expressive emotions. Like you have anger, ultra happy, sad, and confused. And if you just did those four and just did them all on one character, if you'd have just been this game didn't need to have all these different NPCs. It could have just had one NPC that could then have expressions like maybe 4 or 5 expressions. And then if you just have that, then you're just trying to do this one communication. I think what needed to happen is this needed to be pared down into an experience with one person. Like when we were in the earlier phase of this, we were talking about like a store clerk or something, and just trying to buy the right coffee. And if we would have just if it would have just been that experience, we could have then got into all these nuances of miscommunication, like saying something that'll offend, saying something that will, you know, make someone super happy, but you maybe didn't intend that to happen. Like these are all things I feel like could happen with language, but it doesn't seem like you even were interested in exploring that.
I think he's more interested in the more nuanced things, and you can't really get that with art anyway. You get that with, I guess you could get some things with really detailed expressive art, but really writing is where you're going to get the really nuanced levels of communication. Um, Reading a book is the best way to get internal monologue and thoughts and uh, small gestures. I don't know if you've read Dune. That would be a really good example of the type of communication that I think it's going for.
Well, the other thing is that when you're going to a foreign country and you don't know the language that well, uh, you have no hope of even getting to those higher level things. Like you're just happy that you put down money and an item and they understand that you want to buy that. Like
Right.
you're not really worrying about offending anyone. You're just trying to survive. So
Yeah, that's what I like. That's what I mean by the text. I think is the best way of you can, as far as low budget, quick to produce text is a perfectly legitimate way of
yeah.
doing any of those types of expressions, right?
Well then, Lyle, building off what you said, would you suggest a Twine game, like a game that's purely built on text and maybe just has a whole bunch of branching paths?
I don't know what Twine is capable of, but as far as technology choices go, I think that largely is whatever the person who's making the game is comfortable and has skills in is the best option. If you're trying to make something in a short period of time, unless they want to learn Twine or whatever. I don't know, that's really up to whoever's making the game.
Well,
As someone who has played quite a few Twine games, I would say that Twine could be a really, really effective venue for something like this. It's interesting to note, Lyle's talking about expressing small gestures through text. LangSink in its current form does this a little bit. It just doesn't do it a ton because there's a limited number of interactions with each NPC and there's only a handful of NPCs. But there were a few cases in here where, like, if you try to offer the wrong thing to the VO guard, like I don't remember, he like curls his lip in disgust or something, and there's another thing where he gets kind of upset and like waves you away or something. I don't remember what the exact text was, but there were a couple moments like that. And I felt like those were pretty effective moments. The only things that kind of undid that for me is just that there's not enough of it, again, just because the game's really small. And also the fact that the way that the text interface is in here, I felt like it was like I kind of lost track of stuff just because it's the default Unity UI with the kind of small text, and like there's not much fanfare to something new appearing in the window. Like it's just there. There's not a scrolly animation or all those little polishy details. And so sometimes I felt like things did get lost in the scroll for me. But where I noticed it, I felt like it worked well.
Cool. And the reason I didn't do a full-on interactive fiction was because I felt like there were some mechanics that I wanted to have available to have the player experience and use that would make them be in more of the experience mindset and more able to experience the actual experience. Namely, like seeing that they're like physically traveling somewhere, seeing people that look different than you, which, yeah, you could do that all through text, but I felt like it would be still okay to do in a RPG style like this. And then more specifically, there's probably an interactive fiction that has inventory systems, but I wanted the puff to have a value to the player, which I think you kind of get because you have to do several key presses and walk back and forth and stuff to get it. And then both of those are kind of important setups for the VO guard experience. But so while I agree it could be done in interactive fiction, I felt like this presentation gave a bit more putting the player into the right experience.
I don't know. Maybe it was just me not having things enabled properly, but it didn't. The game didn't. When I told it to give 6 of something to somebody, it still only gave them 1. Is that maybe that's a bug? I don't know.
The NPCs are nice and they only take what they're looking for.
Oh, okay. Is that what Japan was like? You had a very good experience.
Yeah. Luckily, nobody tried to rob me or anything.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say something about the guard, because the guard was like angry at me, right?
Yeah.
So I was feeling like I offered him 6, and he only took 1. I was thinking, if this guy's angry at me and was like this crazy foreigner or whatever, I figured that would be the guy that would take all 6 and just let me go.
Yeah, I considered having him take more. Maybe I should. Did you give him 3 and then you had to go back and get more, or?
No, I just had a bunch and I just gave him 6, and he took however much he.
Oh, okay.
I knew he didn't take 6. I didn't really pay attention to the exact amount. But,
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one question that I have is, if assuming I don't just scrap all this because of this review, do do you think it'd be worthwhile to um, change anything with how I talk to the NPCs? Like, is it really annoying and frustrating that you walk through NPCs? And is it annoying and frustrating that you can't like walk up and talk to someone when you're not directly facing them?
It's a little confusing when I'm like inside of them and I can't interact with them.
Yeah, the NPC, the lack of NPC collision was the thing that jumped out at me more than anything. That and the super slow movement speed.
Yeah, the slow movement speed was probably the most frustrating out of all those things for me. Once I learned the collision stuff, it didn't really bother me after that. Though the one thing that really kind of took me out and was confusing, I would say it's the biggest pain point of the whole experience was the initial wall of text you get. And it talks about you're trying to buy some rhythm and vitality. I don't know if that ever came into play in the game. Maybe it did, but it wasn't communicated to me clearly if it ever did happen in the game. I got all the way to the end with the lady. She gave me pulses, and then I gave her my press or whatever. And then it says also that your sell your heavy pressure and burden. And I don't like, is press the same as heavy pressure? And
Yeah, I should just say that straight up, I think.
yeah, and I don't know if burden is the same thing or if that's something different. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I kind of didn't know exactly what I was. Um, yeah, that wasn't completely clear to me. So if yeah, just having a clear objective that way and knowing what that is, I think would help smooth the experience. Having something to work towards and knowing what you're working towards.
So we have these big words in here like vitality and burden and pressure. It seems like that was trying to do something, and then at the end we have give the pressure to this blue girl. I can't quite Io or however you want to pronounce it, and you give the pressure to her, and she appears crestfallen, and then after that stares silently at pressure and sighs. We've apparently like ruined her day by
Yeah, I felt bad at the end.
giving
I
her
was
this
like,
item.
what did I just do?
And like,
Yeah, that was all intentional. It's kind of a depressing ending, but I didn't know how else to end it. Like that's kind of how life is if you successfully go and sell something. I don't know. I usually feel bad.
I don't
But
know. It was more confusing than anything. Was your intention to confuse?
no, it's actually a lesson on those elements, but um, it's probably really distracting from the main point of the game. So
What do you mean elements? You mean vitality and pressure?
yeah, the six things on the bottom right.
They're abstracted in a way that makes it. I don't know. It's like we're talking about language barriers, but then there's this meta language barrier between the game and you, and then the characters in the game and each other, and like giving credit to the artist, like just it's kind of that thing I showed you where you're supposed to consider the artist a genius, and it's like, well, are you trying to set up a language barrier between us and the game, and then also the NPCs and the player character? It's like I'm trying to find these layers of meaning. I am getting confused in the end. And you said confusion was not your goal, so maybe a little bit more clarity that the game is also trying to establish a language barrier between you and the actual game.
Yeah, so one of the goals was for you to feel confused, you know, as the game is presenting these, you know, um, all of these strange symbols, but it's not important that it's how it ends.
So would you say that your goal in this was to create confusion, but also to establish that language barriers are hard to overcome?
Yeah.
Would you say that that was your only two goals?
Well,
Because there's all this inventory management stuff and like flea market trading in here.
yeah. Well, so it's not really. I wouldn't say that those are the only two goals because it's a little bit that summary kind of cuts out some of the nuances of um, how people that don't speak our language get treated when they're trying to buy and sell stuff here. Um,
So I think your game accomplishes what you want it to. One, as far as expressing how people are treated and that language barrier, and but one thing I don't know if it communicates is your experience on how you felt as the foreigner, right? So you could have some text in there on your internal thoughts or feelings in reaction to what people are saying to you. Um, I don't know if that's something you want or if that's just internal to the player that is playing. But yeah.
yeah, I didn't figure that it would be something that I wanted. Um, I feel like in general it's like that's a space that games can explore, but in this case I didn't really want to impose or try to rewrite what the player should feel or what they should think. So
I'd recommend in the future just like maybe limiting the things you're trying to express to a player because there are like a lot of systems happening and a lot of really complex things that you're trying to get off a space that seems simple and in a space that looks like a 8-bit video game. And
I
like
think
that's gonna bounce off a lot of people. Just the fact that it's this art style. They're gonna be like, why? They're not gonna expect these types of concepts being present in here. They're gonna have to really dig, and they're gonna also have to know ahead of time. They're gonna have to like read your statement before they experience this game. So maybe putting your primer in front of this game might be necessary because the art
yeah,
style
and I'm okay with that. That's
makes an
how
expectation.
that's what was required with Mainichi, and I'm fine with that.
Right. I mean, it's kind of there in the name of the game. Like it doesn't feel to me like he's trying to bury the lead here or anything. I would say I take a slightly different view of the type of person who's going to play it and how they're going to react, though, just because the type of concept that it's about does not strike me as the type of concept that your average like AAA mainstream only gamer is going to be entertained by, no matter how it's presented. It strikes me as the type of concept that your indie art gamer type of person who likes more niche type stuff, it's going to be the type of concept that's the type of person that would be attracted to it. And I feel like that type of person, broadly speaking, is less sensitive to the specific way the concept is presented in terms of things like its art style or other aspects of its aesthetic. And they're the type of the person who is not only willing to dig for the meaning, but actively seeks out games that require them to dig for the meaning, and tends to be unsatisfied with games that just throw it right there on the surface. So I don't know that it's necessarily a problem that, for example, you have something that looks like an 8-bit video game and you think you're sort of coming in with an expectation of 8-bit style gameplay, and instead you're getting this sort of more, niche experimental experience. Like I think, Mainichi is a perfect example of a game that has an 8-bit art style with a experimental experience. And that did pretty well with the type of crowd that is predisposed to be interested in that kind of stuff.
I agree with Josh. I think the only things that are in the game that are really inhibiting you from getting to that meaning are the things that would distract you. Things like player collision with NPCs and things like that, or the initial getting an understanding of how to give and accept items is a little hump you have to get over, and so it's a little bit distracting before that happens. But people that are looking for a meaning for games with meaning will get past that and play to where there is that meaning. But if you really wanted to polish it, you could make that system more streamlined or something.
Yeah, that control scheme for giving and manipulating your inventory was super weird to me. I imagine, if I'm not mistaken, Vaser, this is your first or one of your first Unity games specifically. Am I right? Like you were pretty new to Unity starting this.
I'm still pretty new. It's technically my third or fourth, but the others are all super, super basic. So.
Okay. So I pretty much chalked it up to that. It was just like, oh, hey, it's easy to quickly bind some stuff to some keys and make this work. But that definitely did feel like, from just a pure usability perspective, like forgetting all the other stuff, that definitely felt like the most clumsy thing in the game to me was using the numbers for that. I wished I could have just taken the mouse and clicked on the interface down there.
Yeah.
Or had some kind of interaction like that. On a similar note, and I don't know how much more time, if any, you want to put into dealing with stuff like this, but because I use an enormous monitor with a ridiculous resolution, almost every browser tab on every website, I have to zoom in a bit using the Chrome zoom. When I zoom in here, because it increases the canvas size of the web player, it causes your interface at the bottom to not be docked at the bottom anymore. I imagine you're drawing the interface with absolute coordinates.
Yeah.
And so I end up with a screenshot where like the interface ends up sitting 20% off the bottom of the screen and docked to the left. And so it was a little bit awkward until I realized that I was zoomed. But
okay, so that's probably just something I need to make relative and.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I would do.
I think I saw some of those controls. I can work on that too.
Yeah, typically when I use the Unity GUI, since you have to specify absolute coordinates when you hand the rect into the GUI system, I just use screen.width and screen.height to get the canvas size, and then I'll normalize to that in order to figure out what the absolute coordinate should be.
So I was totally convinced by you guys about I guess I was looking at it from a different target audience than you guys were. Like, he never specified what his audience was, so I just assumed an audience that doesn't seem to be like the one he was shooting for. So I'm kind of convinced on that now, based on what you guys said. The one thing I am still not convinced about is how many topics you're trying to jam into this small space. I kind of feel like you could have even taken this and split it into 3 different games, because I don't know, when there's that many ideas put into one place, they tend to muddy each other. Like, we have an idea about foreign language, an idea about confusion. Those things relate a little bit, but I think it might be more beneficial and be a more powerful experience if you just tackled these things one at a time. Like, I think this game could have been even simpler than it was, and have been a more powerful experience if you would have just not tried to have fit in your entire experience, or like maybe not your entire, but as big of an experience of Japan into this one space. That's, I mean, opinions may differ, but I felt like you might have gotten a stronger experience that way.
Yeah, I think in general that's true. And it makes me happy to hear you say that you think it's complicated, which makes me feel uh, like because I felt like it was really simple, and um, in reality, there really is basically only one of the core experiences with the guard um, that I was able to fit in. But I feel like there's a lot of the setup in here that's needed to make it really come off. But um, I'll definitely keep that in mind.
It's not complicated gameplay wise. It's complemented. It's complicated like with the themes we're using, and the emotional and psychological weight these things have in our mind is like how powerful those experiences can be they're actually stepping on each other's toes in this experience. So it's complicated in that way, not as far as like a video game.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Is there anything else like you
Any
want to talk
comments
about?
from the audience?
Do you want to talk about your next project if you're done talking about this one?
Um, no, I think I've gotten lots of good feedback here, and I haven't really decided or started thinking about my next one yet. So
All right. So is that all you want to talk about?
yeah. So unless we have anything else from anyone.
I have one question, just out of curiosity. Is there any significance behind the name Vio, or is that just the name?
So it is basically just the name, but it's kind of the insider, like what I was thinking when I made it. It's the part of the world that is greater than 10x.
10x. What does that mean?
Like it's greater than 10 tiles in the on the x-axis.
I am completely
Oh,
lost.
greater than sign 10.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
And I forgot to check that one for any kind of evil meaning or whatever. Hopefully it doesn't mean anything offensive. Most of the other stuff I did check. Emerald's name specifically. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the things you got to consider is like what you're naming these things. Like,
Yep.
if you're doing this in an artistic context, you got to realize that like every single thing you name, every single one of these characters has to have some sort of meaning because we're not just talking about random video game characters trying to explore an idea. So, what people are named, like naming a guard is kind of a missed opportunity. You could have done something there. You have John, which
Well,
is a biblical name, I think.
yeah. And a very English name.
Yeah, when you use those biblical names, they start to carry a lot of weight that people can assign to that if they are religious or Christian in any way. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful with those kind of names because they might carry weight that you do.
Oh yeah. Like when there's people that create songs and then people think that the song is about this and this and this instead of yeah.
Well, and that's their right. I mean, it shouldn't be against like as soon as you produce a piece of artwork, it's no longer yours really. It's whoever's
Yep.
consuming it. So
Yep.
if you named characters like Jonah and like Noah and like Cain and Abel, like that holds a lot of weight. And like that's a missed opportunity if you don't try to explore that with the naming of your characters, I feel like.
Okay.
So that's something to think about too.
Cool. Awesome.
So, just while we're here in the last few minutes, do you have any Unity specific questions or anything that came up while you were working on this? I know the last time we looked at one of your games, we had a little bit of discussion on some of the tech stuff. that seemed like it was helpful and useful?
Um, I didn't. There's nothing else that really kind of that I think I'd be able to ask succinctly here. There, except for one thing, the having boxes for like getting the world collision in, I was able to do through tiled to Unity, um, and it created a nice polygon collider thing for me. And if I know that if there's just one of those in the world, then that's going to work out pretty well, since it doesn't have to do too much work. But if I was to do collision on these moving NPCs, do you think I would just use that same, like a box collider 2D, and programmatically make it follow them around, and that would work fine for until a certain large scale, I guess?
Well, you could just stick a box collider component on their game object, and you're not even going to have to do any programming to make it follow them around, because it's going to be attached to their transform automatically. So that'll be taken care of for you. What you would have to deal with is dealing with an NPC, once he has collision, an NPC moving into the player, and what do you want to have happen there? Does he push the player out of the way or stop or whatever? You'd have to deal with that part of the collision resolution.
Okay.
But you wouldn't have to like manually move the collider around.
Okay.
You could either stick it. So I don't know what the hierarchy for your NPCs looks like, but you could either stick it if you have something really simple where it's just right now they're one game object with like a sprite component or a renderer or whatever. You could just stick a box collider component onto that and you're fine. Or if you prefer, or if they're a little more complex, there's no reason why you couldn't make a new game object that's just the box collider and parent it to their game object, and it's going to follow it around in the same way.
Okay. Cool.
Well, Fridge Crisis in the chat is telling us that there's a lot of space between the characters, and you kind of brought that up before, talking about you wanted to have this feeling of traveling to another place. And you mentioned in an email to us that you were thinking about changing the color of VO to be a different tile, and that might get at what Fridge Crisis is trying to say. Is he doesn't? I don't think he. I think. Well, I shouldn't say what he thinks. That he. It's so hard to not speak from a person's mouth. So I should just ask you the question. Do you think, what is the purpose of having so much space in your own words instead of me trying to just get back to you?
So, it is a bit more space than than is necessary for sure, and I could trim it down and slim it down. I do feel like the walk across the bridges and the walk from left to right to get into the new country should be like 5 squares or whatever, a significant amount of time, so that you feel like you're traveling. But and that's kind of why things are positioned out in my original vision for the game. That's just kind of how it all ended up laying out in this U shape. And I'm pretty happy with it as it is, but it's definitely true that there's a lot of wide open, empty space. And I could definitely fit it all in. You also, due to how you have to face an NPC without walking through them, you need plenty of space around them to be able to actually talk to them. So there's also that technical reason. Yes.
It's because he's the artist. He wants there to be more visual interest in the scene. He's seeing what happened with his art, and he's like, "Man, I could have made that so much better." That's a standard artist coming in. should have just had me do more. I would have happily done more. That's
Yeah.
okay, Fridge
No,
Crisis.
putting in. I was. I did think about putting in other stuff, um, but I was also careful in the design to make sure it felt like uh, there was no spots where you should go hunting for secrets, because I didn't want anyone to. I wanted to reduce the chance of people feeling disappointed that, oh, there's a nook over here. Maybe that means there's a secret, and then
I
finding no secret.
I did do that in my first playthrough. I started pushing on all the walls looking for a false wall.
Oh, just at the beginning.
No, after I finished the story, I started like walking to each
Okay.
wall and pushing on them.
I the first time I played, I did it in the beginning section for a little bit because I was actually stuck for a little while because it never occurred to me, and I don't know why, because in retrospect it's the most obvious thing, but it never occurred to me to actually push space on the river girl, and so I couldn't get anything, and I was like, am I like the dumbest person ever, or what in the crap? And like, yeah, so I was just like super stuck there. And so yeah, I was looking around for false walls and stuff. But once I realized that I was just being an idiot, then it was super clear that the only interactive things in the map are the NPCs.
If you
Cool.
if you were to add visual interest in, it would have to be on this walk between on the transition between countries, because if I actually think that's a good idea to focus on adding in a different color tile set for the land of VO. And then if you want to add in like trees, like Fridge Crisis is saying, I'll probably only put them on the transition zone between the two countries. Because that's where you're going on your journey, and that's where like all of the non-terraformed area would be if there was any. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting in too much detail here. I do think it's
those are
necessary.
valid ideas.
I do think it's necessary to or it would help a lot to change the land of VO to a different color. Maybe consider this divider between the starting location and the land of VO a little more.
You could probably get away with just changing the grass tuft decorations to like flowers or something.
Oh yeah.
Like you're not even adding more collision or making anything but you're going to get a really clear visual separation if in VO they're all flowers and in whatever the original place is they're all the grass tufts like you have right now. You wouldn't even have to. I don't think you'd even have to change the background tile. Because the one thing about just literally straight up changing the color is you're just going to get a hard tile edge where you go from grass to sand or whatever. And maybe that's fine because the rest of it's pretty lo-fi. Like you have that on the edges of the rivers and stuff, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But I think it would feel a little bit more natural and a little bit more connected if you did it with the decorations instead of the base tile.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
I don't know why, but I'm like thinking about visual pacing now. I'm like, what if you just made it so you couldn't see the land of VO from the starting location, like, or at least not be able to see the characters? Because like I'm at the starting location and I can see both of at least two of the VO characters, and the only like the only reveal I get over the course of the game is coming down here and then seeing this tourist down here, which is probably one of the most exciting parts of the game is seeing that new sprite. So it might actually be worth your time to make the map a little bigger so that you can't see the characters or even the land of VO from the beginning of the game. Like that would have...
Well, if you make the map bigger, then the meaning of the name VO doesn't work anymore because it's bigger than 10. But you could zoom the camera in. You could set the camera so that you just see 10 by 10 tiles on the screen.
Well, the name VO, awesome. I don't feel like is that important. It's kind of like a joke. But that's up to you if you want to keep it that way.
Okay. Cool.
Well, Bridge Crisis is saying we should put in a fog of war, and I'm saying the fog of war can just be how big your screen is. Like, it might be worth it to make the screen longer and then just put more of these gray dividers in between the two lands. That way when you actually make the walk, you get this reveal of the land of VO. Now, I don't know how important that is to what you're saying, but it is a nice visual pacing technique.
Cool.
All right, we're about in an hour. Oh, we made it. Woohoo!
Thank you very much, everybody.
Surely.
That was fun. Hopefully it came out well. Anyway, check y'all later. I'm gonna end the stream. Wait. We gotta sign off. Yeah, I'm Vince Betteridge. Vince the Bee on Twitter. Go ahead, Vaser.
So I'm Vaser. You can find my stuff at vaser222.com. It's VAZOR. And yeah, look forward to more experimental stuff from me in the future.
Josh.
I am Josh Sutphin. You can find me on Twitter at Invicticide and check out the game I'm working on right now at elderstargame.com. I just dropped both of those in the chat on the side. So you can see what they're spelled like.
Yeah, we can drop those bombs in the chat. And you, Lyle?
I am Lyle Cox. You can find me at Lyle Cox on Twitter or my website, togetherthegame.com. That's the game I'm working on, is Together on LangSink.
Alright, that's it for us. Now I'm ending the stream for real.